Good afternoon, everybody. Can you remember, do you two remember when you went to primary school, that when you had a teacher, like you had all the kids would go, like we had Mr. Tinkler, he was our headmaster. So he'd say, "Good morning, students," and we'd go, "Good morning, Clara." Do kids still do that these days, or is that just our generation?
I'm not in primary school anymore. We've moved on. I think they do still do it.
Do they? I
think it's a thing.
Anyway, everybody, or the one person that has just tuned in, whoever you are at this point. So we have two great guests today, Joe and Sue from Impact Mental Health, and a good friend of mine, David Downs, who everybody knows, and he should actually win New Zealander of the Year at some point, David Downs. Why has he not been nominated? Maybe next year. But he suggested the two fantastic speakers, Joe and Sue, who have just joined our roster.
We did see there you were trying to find a word to describe us. There was a bit of a pause, wasn't there? Did you notice?
From me?
Take that word, yeah.
No, do you know why I paused? I paused because I was going to say these two lovely ladies, and then I thought that's actually really patronising these days. So I quickly stopped.
We're lovely as well. We're lovely as well.
Okay. So these two lovely women, and yeah, that's why I paused. Well picked up though, Sue. Thank you for that. So I'm really, really delighted to have Joe and Sue join the ET roster. You can find their profiles under our mental health section. And they have just published a really, forgive the sound, everybody, by the way. I'm in an office at the back of a cafe. It's a long story. And there's someone, oh no, that's my chair. But we don't have Banjo the dog running around the place, so that's fantastic. But anyway, they've just published a new book, and why don't you guys tell us all about it, because it's kind of cool. Here we go.
Hate Myself, Hate My Life came about because both Sue and I mentor and coach teens. And we often see teens in suicide ideation and with eating disorders and in the grips of anxiety or depression and really stress overload. And this is a message that we hear all the time, that they hate themselves or they hate their life or both. And actually, it's not just the teenagers. We both coach and mentor adults as well, and we hear it the same thing from them. And it's such a sad place to be, because we do live in a beautiful world. Mother Nature is quite a wonderful thing. And actually what we'd rather them do is be loving themselves and loving their life. So the book is all about a journey to find that place. So going through what is anxiety and coping mechanisms, finding your identity, finding self-love, because I think that's the stem of a lot of problems. People don't have self-love and appreciation, and building resilience and finding healthy boundaries and healthy relationships and learning how to communicate. You know, parents want their children to be healthy and happy. They're the two main answers that we hear all the time. Yet a lot of parents themselves are not demonstrating those two things. They're not being the best role model to their children. And it's really hard for the children to wonder what those two things are. So hence where the book came about.
And also we are really well aware at the moment the mental health statistics are horrific, and the mental health market is flooded with psychologists, counsellors, therapists who have an amazing role to play. But we didn't want to be another ambulance at the cliff edge. We wanted to go in with preventative strategies and actually give a book to a teenager and say, this is something you can pick up and actually learn to love yourself. You can look in the mirror every single day. Here's an exercise. Write on the mirror, I love myself, and say it again and again and again until you actually embody those words. Would you have your best friend speak to you in the way that your mind does? So it's little tips in the book that train a teenager in resilience, as Joe said, in boundaries, healthy relationships, communication. So we want it in the hands of a teenager so they can pick it up. And we actually think that Hate Myself, Hate My Life is quite appropriate because, as Joe said, that's exactly what the teenagers say.
Do you think, you know, life is, this could be an obvious question, is there a lot more challenges for teenagers these days than other generations? It seems like, to me, and I've got two teenagers, that they grow up so damn fast compared to when, my generation, when I was 13.
everything in life, Sean, is positive and negative if you look at the yin and the yang. So there's advantages to growing up quickly. You know, they can access the web and they can set up their own businesses very young. They can be empowered to speak and have a voice. The disadvantage, obviously, is information overload and comparison on social media, fear about the future because they're exposed to so much at a very young age. So I think we need to be very aware, are their brains exposed to too many endorphins? For example, porn. Many teenagers under the age, or children under the age of 10, something like 6 in every 3 have watched hard porn. 6 in every 10 have watched hard porn. So that's huge numbers of children exposed to endorphins that their brains aren't developed enough to cope with. So yes, we're living in hard times. What can we do about it? That's our role, to empower parents, to empower children and empower teenagers.
And we can always look back on generations previous to us and say life's changed. And of course it does continue to change, because that's the only thing that we can guarantee in life. Nothing stays the same. And as Sue says, we need to put strategies and things in place now for the world that we are living in and we find ourselves in. You know, we can all say, oh, you know, we didn't have social media when we were younger, wasn't all that comparison. Yeah, social media has such great things about it as well. So you can't, it's never going to go away. So what we need to do is find a way to work around it. And as we say, give our teenagers hope in their heart, seeds of hope, that they are special, that they are amazing, and to try and get them out of that comparison game, but by giving them self-awareness, self-respect, self-love.
And giving parents the tools to manage raising children as well. Lots of parents are in overwhelm, and our job is actually to teach parents those skills. I worked in boarding schools for 15 years raising teenagers. Joe and I have raised 4 teens each as solo mums. It's hard, it's difficult. And the first part we always say is acknowledge how hard it is, but then empower yourself. Don't become a victim to it. Empower yourself. There's so many courses online. There's parenting classes to go to. So we love to say to parents, we give you permission back to parent, but what does that actually look like for you?
How about a son or a daughter who, you know, is doing well at school, sociable, but you know, likes is a bit of a free spirit, and you find it hard to, you know, get those boundaries right of, hey, you need to be home at this time, and how do you get around that?
I think at the end of the day, I know you use the word free spirit, and I love that, because we don't ever want to quash that out of our children at all. However, as parents, we still have to put boundaries in place, and our teenagers are there to push the boundaries, and they're to push the boundaries while they're at home, and that's where they're safest to do that. And, you know, I always do it from a loving heart, be forgiving, do it with love. But again, those boundaries do have to be in place. And if your boundary, but also ask yourself as a parent, is this boundary realistic? Am I putting a 9 o'clock curfew on my teenager when actually all the other teenagers are out till 10:30? Because that's not really going to wash. You know, you don't want to be too strict, but you don't want to be too lenient either. You want to try and find that middle ground that you're comfortable with, that, you know, society's comfortable with, and that their friendship group's comfortable with. But again, having permission to parent, you know, because children are very good at manipulating. They don't even realize what they're doing sometimes, but we are kind of all selfish beings. We want things our own way.
And I think as parents as well, it's having the ability to look at the strengths and the weaknesses in our child. So their very strength is also their weakness, and vice versa. So for example, the class bully is going to be the leader in society because they've got the confidence to stand up. But when they don't know where to put that confidence, and it's not channeled in a healthy way, it can turn into their negative attribute. So I think a free spirit, as Joe said, I think they're the confident people, and we want confident people to go and work in all the fields of life where there is no fear. They have no fear. So we don't want to knock their strength out of them. We want to nurture their strength, but still keep them within a healthy boundary. And often in the childhood years, it's difficult to do that with children, but you want to, I mean, I've got a child that's really tenacious. I really struggle to not use the word stubborn over him. He was born, he is stubborn. But I've always said to him, you are the most tenacious child I've ever met, and tenacity will be your strength. But when you use it in a very unhealthy way, it's detrimental to yourself and other people. So speak with strength over them, and also discuss with that child their weakness. And with a free spirit, talk about the reasons boundaries are put into place to keep them safe, to keep them healthy.
What are some of the other things that you cover in the book?
Well, there's the 6 chapters, as we say, and the first one is mainly about self-love, because, you know, I think that's the seed, that's the root of everything, really, the baseline, the foundations. You know, if you think of building a house, if your foundations aren't secure, the rest of the house is going to fall down. And that's the same with the book, really. You know, we can teach you healthy communication. We can give you tips on having healthy relationships, which is what we all want. We're here for connection and love. And we can teach that, but unless you're giving yourself that connection and love, it's rocky foundations. That's where the book starts, with the self-love. And then we go into other chapters. We go down.
Communication is a vital one. How do we communicate with our children? What we do often is, when they're teenagers, we stop communication because they go into anger, they're triggering our issues, and so communication becomes unhealthy. Communication is so important. And actually, Joe and I always say, talk about the things that you want to avoid. Talk about the subjects that are really tough. Do you talk to your child about shame? Every child has a bucket full of shame. Teachers put shame in it. Peer group put shame in it. Parents put shame in it. And your child is walking around with a bucket full of shame. Your job is to talk about shame. What is shame doing for you? What's the difference between guilt and shame? How do we empty our child's bucket full of shame? So have the conversations that really matter. Talk about relationships. Role model for children healthy communication at home all the time. Keep channels of communication open.
Yeah, and the book also goes into identity, because often what we do is we're surrounded by people and we take on their identity, or society shows us certain things and we all wear certain hats. But to actually find out what your values are, what's important to you and what your identity is. Because as soon as you go off track from your identity and your values, then everything starts to feel a little bit icky anyway. And that's where our gut kicks in. You know if you're with a group of friends and they're doing something you don't really want to do, it's not really in line with your values. So therefore, it's just giving our teenagers the confidence and the permission as well to allow them to be who they are, because actually all the other teenagers around them are struggling with exactly the same thing. They just all do it in different ways. As Stu says, there might be the class bully, there might be somebody who's really sporty, there might be somebody who's really academic, there might be somebody who's really creative, there might be the drama queen. They're all dealing with things. It's just about dealing with it with compassion and kindness as well.
Isn't it amazing how different kids are, even in families of I've got 2 young sons, as you know, one a 16-year-old, one a 13-year-old, and they may as well have been born on different planets. One is incredibly confident. The other one is confident, but has a completely different personality, just very quiet, soft-spoken. The other one is just loud and anything can come out at any moment. It must even get more complicated when you've got, son and daughter. It's a different level.
But I think that's where we've got to really understand people, and that's where communication is really important. And communication covers a lot of things. Between you and I now, there's this communication happening, and it happens so quickly. It's milliseconds. I send a message to you, you receive it, but are you receiving it in the way that I intend to send it? And this is where a lot of text messaging and emails go wrong, because you obviously take out your body language, take out your tone. And these are important things. And that's why we really explain that in the book to teenagers. It's body language is so important. When somebody walks in the room and they're in a bad mood, they might not even say anything to you. Might not utter a single word, but you know what mood they're in. And then we teach them about the 5 love languages, and then we do this when we deal with parents a lot as well. If you can understand what your love language is and what that is of your children, communication becomes a lot easier, because if you can meet each other's love language, then communication opens a little bit easier.
Guys, this sounds like a fascinating book. It really does. Congratulations. How long did you work on it for?
Oh, we started before lockdown. So that was quite interesting, because we started before the whole explosion of COVID and mental health really started to kick in. So probably all in all about 4 months, and then backs and forwards with editors and publishers for another couple of months. So it's been quite an exciting journey. And I think what's unique about the book, a few bookshops have said to us, it's a niche market with teens because we speak in first person. It's not an instruction manual in the sense that it's factual and it's preaching at them. In fact, one of the psychologists that's reviewed it has said it's lovely because it's not a preachy book. It's very much, we care. We understand that life is full of struggle. If you've picked up this book and you're struggling right now, then we have come to give you some resources to say you matter, your life has a purpose and a meaning. And even though it seems desperate right now, we understand and we want to encourage you that there will be a way through it. So we really sit from a point of understanding where the teenagers are at this present moment in their struggle.
And not to blow our own trumpet, but we both managed to find a real, but we're going to do it anyway. We both managed to really connect with teenagers. And I think it's because, well, we just truly love them. You know, we both had 4 children each, so we do obviously have a love for children. But we see how special and unique and individual and magnificent each and every one is. You know, Sue, as she says, was a teacher in school for many, many years. I went into schools for several years facilitating courses on health and wellbeing, communication. And I was dealing with years 11 to 13. And you know what? I sometimes got the naughty kids, if you want to call them that, or the ones that aren't really that academic and they don't want to do stuff. And they came in with a kind of another course, another class. But once you speak to the heart of them and you actually just talk to them on their own level, and you know, you give them the pros and cons of what's going to happen in the day. And you can either work with me, you can work against me, but I'm all for you. And they just blossom in front of your eyes, and it's such a lovely thing to see.
And it's so
beautiful.
sad because a lot of people don't give teens the time of day. You know, they get such a bad press, and yet, you know, when you've got 4 teens in the house, invariably you've got another 4 as well, and the banter that they have is extraordinary. You just need to ask teens questions and get them motivated. You know, we need to, as parents and adults, stop telling our children, stop talking at them, and actually just ask them questions, because they're a world of inspiration, incredible ideas. Their views are very different from ours. And once you stop and take the time, you start to realize that they're growing up in such a different world. And we're totally wrong to impose our views and our opinions about our life onto them because they're growing up in such a different time. Just ask them questions, talk to them, get them to open up, and they are just such an inspiration.
I can see some of my clients already booking you guys to talk about this very subject, because, you know, we want to companies these days, they want to look after their people, and there's many ways that you can do that. One way is giving them some tools to, you know, cope better with their family life. So I can definitely see some clients booking it. But you also cover, you do other keynotes as well besides the subject, don't you? So can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Go on. She likes to say all the nice
We
fancy
love
words.
to speak on algorithmic transformation. So we love to speak on how, number one, Joe and I will be completely honest, because we present ourselves and say we're real, we're raw, and we're honest, and we're really prepared to be vulnerable. And so number one, when we started our business, Impact Mental Health, we couldn't actually say the word algorithms. And so it's about stepping into vulnerability. It's doing the things you can't do and facing the challenges that lie ahead. So vulnerability is key to creating any change, any transformation, any growth.
And within vulnerability comes honesty, surrendering, awareness, and it's you can't make change if you're not prepared to be in that space. And it is quite scary in that space. But we go through it, and when we talk about it, we go through it from our personal perspectives as well. We tell our stories. We've both faced big conflict, big adversity, big suffering in life. And here we are with smiles on our face to show you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Share the stories of our podcast guests who all have, you know, they've all had such different life experiences, yet they've all used quite similar tools and techniques. So we bring it all together to show people that there is.
Now, where can we find your podcast again?
Pods with Posh and Pool, and it's on all the podcast sites, iTunes, iHeartRadio. I think the critical thing for Joe and I is that we always say adversity doesn't discriminate, and I know you'll have listeners now who will be going through all sorts of tragedy in their lives. They're carrying trauma with them, heartache, pain, suffering, facing lockdown and COVID, relationship splits, teenage children, whatever it is. Everybody at normally every stage of life is going through something, and we constantly think, gosh, when I've just done this today, tomorrow's going to be fine. But life is full of adversity and conflict. So Joe and I are all about, we tell our story, we're very vulnerable. And, you know, my story is one of tragedy, having 3 children abducted when I was pregnant with my 4th. Joe's is one of telling of abortion and struggling with growing up with a father in prison. We're really honest about what that means. But then when we face our struggle in life, then what do we do with it? We've got a choice, and that empowers us to know we've got a choice. We can go into victimhood, or we can go into mentality where I'm going to create change. I'm going to empower myself to come out of it. How do we do that? That's what we teach and we inspire. And we want to create a society where we look at measuring, instead of measuring the power, performance, possession culture in terms of what we have, own and do, it's actually measuring endurance, perseverance, adaptability. That's critical and key to life, because when we have that, we can do anything.
And then through the talk, obviously the word algorithmic was made up by Sue, which is a great word, but we talk about changing our own algorithms. And I say that is going in and addressing the pain, because if we don't address the pain caused from, and you know, we've both got quite big stories, and some might say, oh, Sue's is bigger than mine because she's had 3 children abducted and I didn't go through that. It doesn't matter, because your pain is your pain and it's real. But however, if we don't deal with our pain, hurt people. And we don't do it intentionally. We definitely don't do it intentionally, not very often anyway. But it's about really taking your power back, addressing your pain and moving forward and changing your own algorithms. And you have to keep doing this each day in life almost. It's you don't just all of a sudden go, oh, I'm going to be fit today because I ran a marathon yesterday, I'm fit. No, it doesn't work like that. It's about working on yourself every day. And through our talk, we talk about changing your algorithms. Still can't always say it. By, as we say, going into vulnerability, going into adaptability, showing you how you can build up your perseverance, where your endurance is, and then being accountable and making changes.
Coming into accountability, ownership, responsibility, and that's where you grow. And that's what we want for the people that we work with, the people that we speak to, the companies, the corporations, the schools. We want measurable, transformational growth where people enjoy their lives, and not only enjoy their lives, but they thrive in the midst of the adversity that's always going to come their way.
Hey, it's a real thrill to have talked to you today. What I like about the two of you, I love about the two of you actually, is that you haven't even really delved into it today, and I don't think today we need to go there, but the two of you have gone through a lot of pain in your lives, and yet, seriously, you're two of the most positive people I've ever met. You're just full of life and full of fun, and I have so much respect for people that can do that can go through that adversity, come out the other side, and be as positive and as cheerful as the two of you, and then, you know, spend your life actually helping others to be able to do that with your book, with your talks. So congratulations on the book. Thank you so much for joining the ET roster. I'm sure it's going to be a great year in 2021. And thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Sean. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having us on here, Sean.
I'm very surprised that you both didn't say thank you, Sean, exactly the same time, because
We didn't.
We were going to say thank you, Sean. You're fantastic, and love. We were going to use your 2 words.
Yeah, we were going to sing it like we were in assembly.
okay. I love it. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sean.